Meteorologist Kyle Gillette, and as promised, we are hitting the 2 o'clock hour, and we are going to be discussing the forecast. I think, Kyle, we have a storm that's on the way.
Yeah, if you haven't been able to tell that already, yes, we certainly do have a storm on the way, and it does look to be one of the more impactful storms we've seen in a while, especially this winter. We haven't had anything close to this yet, just because it's been so kind of dry and quiet as far as the snow is concerned, and it does look to, bring some higher snow totals, but also that wind, so there's a lot going into this that we're keeping an eye on. There
is. So as we get underway, I know a lot of people are joining us. We have on all the different platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook.
All over the place.
Have our friends from the TV5 First Alert Weather app that they are joining our live stream that's online. That's on WNEM.com. All you have to do is hit that live stream button there in that top bar. Also, if you're joining us on Roku Fire Stick and all the different streaming, if you were watching and you're saying, hey, I got the weather. Yes, we're going to be doing a weather update. Also want to say we're going to be monitoring the comments on the live.
Yes.
So if you have any questions, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, the comments should be activated to where we can read those. So we're going to do those at the end, but as we're going along, if we don't answer your question, feel free to pop them in there. We're going to be keeping an eye to those. So like I said, we're just going to give it maybe another 30 seconds to allow people to come on in, and then we will get started. But this has definitely been a tricky forecast, to say the least.
Especially after earlier in the week. We had that lighter snowstorm move through, and even last week while we were dealing with that, when we knew this one was on our horizon, and we were still trying to wait for the data to kind of take care of the first snowstorm to see what would happen now, and so far it's been decently consistent, and I feel pretty good about the forecast, but it certainly has been tricky.
Yeah, and then we had that Friday, that quick, or Thursday, that quick clipper that came through, and now we're on to Friday. So let's just jump into kind of what the first thing is today is a First Alert Weather Day, and we have the same conditions for tomorrow. So kind of the bare basics here is that this is active for today and tomorrow, and the timing is right here this afternoon when we're going to start to see that snowfall push in, and then that is going to last into Saturday. So just kind of what we've been talking about, we're going to be looking at several inches of snow to be possible within this system, and gusty winds, and maybe that's not even enough. Really strong winds are going to be expected. So some of the hazards that we're going to be discussing here later on in our live stream is going to be those reduced visibilities, blowing and drifting snow. Once you clean out the driveway and then it blows back in, nobody likes that, that's going to be something we watch for in this storm. And then also those power outages are going to be possible. So this is where we're finding the storm right now. We're seeing that in northern Missouri, and still that rain and snow component here.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty strong storm system, and it's not overly strong at the moment, but by the time it makes it into Michigan, it will be a pretty strong storm, and you can see it already has a large expanse across quite a bit of the country. It extends all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, most of the moisture that's going to be fueling our snow comes from the Gulf of Mexico. So it's certainly an impactful storm system. We'll zoom it in here a little bit on a closer view of what's going through, and I want to point out something very important. If you have happened to check the radar at all this morning or earlier this afternoon, and perhaps like right now, here's a look at your pinpoint Doppler. There's a lot of blue and white out there. It would seem that it is snowing in mid-Michigan, but we're still working through a dry layer that we expected to be there. We expected this to take place, where we've got some snow that appears to be moving overhead, but there's nothing really happening at the ground yet, and we call that sublimation. What's happening is there's a dry layer of air that the snow is trying to fall through, but as it hits this dry layer of air, it's very similar to evaporating. It's just evaporating with solid water rather than liquid water. So eventually, by the time it makes it to the ground, there's no more snowflakes. With time, though, we'll see this dry layer eventually kind of get erased, and that's actually taking place already in southern parts of the area. If you look down towards Detroit, Ann Arbor, Jackson, that blue down there, that is actual snow making it to the ground, and it's actually accumulating rather quickly.
Yes, we have some connections down further state, and they're saying, wow, it's really picked up here in a short amount of time, and they're saying on those surfaces that are not treated or don't get a lot of traffic, the sidewalks are starting to add up quickly. As I'm monitoring some of the things, Donovan, you said, hey, the radar's been wrong all day. So Kyle explained why it's been wrong. It hasn't necessarily, like he said, been wrong. That moisture just a little bit higher up and not making it to the ground. So it will start to actually make it to the ground here. You're really going to notice that difference in probably an hour to 2 hours
Yeah,
from now.
that circled area there, that's where the snow's actually making it to the ground, at least for the part that's going to be moving into mid-Michigan. So it's just outside of Genesee County and Shiawassee County right now. So very shortly, it'll end up making its way into mid-Michigan, and then we'll start to see those impacts. And again, that's slick roadways. We've already got the wind out there, so we're already going to be expecting those lower visibilities as well.
Right. So speaking of the future, let's just go right into the hour-by-hour forecast. So we are seeing just kind of there on radar that the snowfall that is kind of making it to the ground is a little bit closer to the west side, and we're also seeing that further south. So as we go into the next hour or so, it's just going to continue to move closer to mid-Michigan. So that's why we are eyeing that time frame for it to set into our southern counties around 3, 4 o'clock. And then you're going to find that those conditions do start to pick up. Here we are, 4 o'clock. We have that steady snowfall, and that's going to be here for us right around the evening commute. And look at this. This is 6 o'clock. So during 5 o'clock, if it's not there, it's coming to where everybody at this point is mainly seeing that steady and heavy snowfall. So that means roadways are quickly going to get dicey. That's not going to be an easy drive home. I know you've had a lot of hard commutes getting into work this week. The drive home is going to be another tough one. So pack your patience and plan on road speeds to be, well, nothing like the posted limits that are out there.
That's for sure.
And even, Kyle, we'll talk about it in a second, but some of those dark blue colors, we're talking some heavy snow as that sets in.
Yeah, so one of the things that, and again, like you said, we'll talk about this here in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes, but one of the things that we're keeping an eye on with this storm, you know, there's always different things. Maybe it's freezing rain or it's wind. Well, one of the things that we're keeping an eye on here along with the wind is going to be the snowfall rate. So that's how much snow we are accumulating in how much time, and we typically measure that by hours. And some of those darker blues there, those deeper colors, what we're expecting here is the opportunity for snow to accumulate as much as an inch in an hour or perhaps more. And I know that may not be very easy to visualize, but if you're talking an inch or 2 inch per hour snowfall rates, that is incredibly heavy. Without the wind, it's even difficult to see through that because that is so much snow. It's also very difficult to keep up with if you're on a road crew. So it's certainly not ideal to be happening, especially when we're talking, the 5, 6, 7 o'clock hour.
Right, and I've spoken to road crews in the past. They say really when it gets beyond an inch an hour, that's when it starts to become a struggle because a lot of their routes are about a 2-hour drive. So when you get over that inch an hour, well, within that 2 hours before they get back to that spot, you're already talking an additional 2, if not more, inches in those zones. So that's why we're anticipating your roadways to quickly kind of just become not ideal, something that you're not going to want to traverse. So as we continue on here, still by 9 o'clock, we're finding that heavy snowfall. We're seeing that to be in our northern counties, and even some of that still hanging around the thumb. So it is going to start to maybe those snowfall rates per hour drop down just a little bit as we go into that 9, 10 o'clock hour. So the last little bit of your Friday. But even overnight, we are going to be watching still for that snowfall to continue. But yeah, there's a little bit of green there. So we do have that rain component. We've been talking about it all week. How much is it going to cut in? How far is it going to go? How is it going to play with snow totals? So we've been working out those details there, and we're mainly going to find through the thumb and even getting close to I-69 that we are going to have that rainfall that tries to cut in. Note though, it is going to be later into the storm. So if you're going to try to go out to dinner tonight, if there are any basketball games that are still remaining, more than likely you're not going to want to travel on roadways by the time that rainfall cuts in. So it's not really going to be much of a rescue factor within this forecast. But even the rain component, it's not going to be here very long because we'll find in the middle of the night, everybody is back over to snow. We're seeing that all across mid-Michigan. Some of those snowfall rates still clipping right along, but not as heavy as what it was on the onset here for Friday evening. And then we go into Saturday morning. The coverage starting to break apart a little bit. During this time, we're almost getting that center of the storm passing through to where we will get to the backside of the storm and make things a little bit easier. I do want to point out, because I know it's just kind of right there across the bay, we have that big blue band. It's kind of dark. It's like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of snow there. That's mainly because we're seeing our wind shift there within our storm. So our weather data is going, oh wait, we have one of the ingredients that we need. So that's why it's really kind of amplifying that. So we are going to be watching for those smaller elements as that time frame gets closer into Saturday morning. But the system is actually going to start to lift out Saturday morning around sunrise, shortly thereafter, and then we'll have a whole nother part of this forecast. Even through lunchtime, you can see lake effect. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but let's go on to that snowfall map because I know this is what everybody wants to see.
Oh
here.
yeah, the numbers. Yeah, so this one is one of the bigger ones that most of us have put together in our times in the weather industry. Now, this also comes with some important notes here, right? We've got ranges generally from that 4 to 8 range from the south and east, and then eventually you're finding your way up to the 10 to 14 inch range to the north and west. The first thing that I think every meteorologist would like everyone to know when you look at these maps is do not just look at the number on the right? Remember, this is a range because there is a potential for a snowfall number to fall within that range. So when we put this together, we're not saying that you're likely to end up with 8, but maybe 4. You're likely to end up between 4 and 8, something like that, right? So don't just look at that number on the right side. So when it comes to the numbers that we have here, for southeastern parts of mid-Michigan, we're talking about a little bit of that rain cutting in, the heavier snow still off to the north and west. So if you're looking in places, closer to Flint, to Lapeer, Owasso, those areas, we're likely to see some of those smaller totals. And generally speaking, as we go into the rest of the evening, these totals will continue to add up, but not necessarily as much as they will up here. And again, these are just numbers, but you're still talking about 4 to 8 inches of snow. So it is still going to be causing issues on the roadways. It's still going to be causing issues with visibility. Just because you're not in the area that has the chance for a foot or, whatever the numbers are.
Doesn't mean that you can let your guard down.
That's exactly right. And so as we go further off to the north and west, you're looking at places like into the Bay region, the tip of the thumb, and even down into parts of Gratiot County. We're now starting to talk maybe a little bit closer to that 6, 8, 10 inch range where we'll have some heavier totals. And then of course the further north and west you go, we're looking closer to that 8 to 12 inch range. And then eventually potentially, actually nearing that foot mark, the closer up you get to places like Harrison or Houghton Lake or West Branch, further to the north and west. Again, heavier snow not falling into the Bay region or down near Flint, but still pretty heavy snow nonetheless.
Right, and we have that note there that says isolated higher totals because some of the weather data has really been showing some wild numbers, we could say. But considering that the raw data comes out, we've been looking at these numbers and using our experience and what we learned there in meteorology school to put these numbers together for you. Another thing that I want to note, though, that higher zone is that's because we're considering that location based off of the placement of the center of the storm, and also how is that going to work with Lake Huron. Another thing that's been an important thing to note with this forecast is the lakes have been pretty wide open.
Yes,
we haven't had enough
ice.
cold air. We all know everybody who wants to do some ice fishing hoping for next week, but yeah, you know that we are not out there with those ice shanties. So we are going to be considering how the lakes are going to be playing with that. So that's why you can see through Aranet County. We do have that little note there that your totals are going to be a little bit lighter just next to the shoreline, but it isn't going to be long, and you're going to notice that difference of those numbers starting to climb. So we are going to come back and touch on this map for folks who are joining us. I know that there's a lot of you out there, and we thank you for giving us a few minutes of your afternoon to make sure that you are updated. Here are some of the impacts that we do have for that first alert weather day. Of course, we talked about the slippery roads and the slower travel. Like I said, pack your patience. We're not going to be moving at posted speeds here. Our road crews are going to be working around the clock and doing their best. So also give space to those snowplow drivers. Just, ride along behind them. Then the road will be nice and clear for you as you're going. So just keep that in mind. I really do want to touch, though, on the blowing snow and low visibilities. I think a lot of us are going, oh, blowing snow, it's just for drifting and that'll be on the back roads. But really the visibility is going to be a concern within this storm because it's not only as the snow comes down, it's going to be heavy and it's going to be hard to see with those headlights through the windshield, but it's also going to be the snow. Once it falls, that wind's going to be able to come pick that right back up, and it's going to be able to twirl that all around, leaving us with a little bit of a snow globe effect, but maybe not as pretty as a snow globe would be.
That's right. Yeah, well, there's a name for that. We actually call it a ground blizzard. It's not really as difficult or as scary as the phrase would make it seem, but if you've got a lot of fresh snow on the ground and still strong winds, which we'll have, for the rest of the weekend, we've got the chance to pick these up. But again, the wind is certainly going to be one of the greater impacts impacts with this system when you add it together with the snow. So it's kind of a multi-thread kind of thing there for us.
Yeah, so we've been talking about the wind gusts, so let's dive into it. We've seen that our winds are capable of being around 35 to 45 miles per hour here this afternoon. And we've noticed on a lot of our cams that the wind is starting to shake them around a little bit. So that's a sign that the storm is getting closer. You'll find as the storm does push in, bringing that steady snowfall. Here we are at 6 o'clock. Some of those wind speeds, we're talking 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts are going to be possible this evening. That's when we have that heavy snow coming down too. Of course, the lake, that is going to make things a little more enhanced in the wind gust department. So keep in mind that those conditions are going to be tough. And I know that we are monitoring that northern zone as well regarding the winds. We've been working with power outages through there from Tuesday's storm. So of course, crews are going to continue working. I believe Consumers Energy said that they have a setup in Tawa. So they do have a crew that's going to be up there. They're going to be keeping an eye to those conditions. But the winds do die down. I'm happy to see some of those numbers get a little bit lighter on Saturday morning.
Yeah, we'll actually maintain some of those gustier than usual winds through the rest of the weekend, but the majority of those really strong winds dying down a little bit as that storm tries to pull out. And, you know, going into the rest of Saturday, going into Sunday, we still maintain some of those upper, 40s, 50 knot winds, but I think that the really higher end of these gusts are going to be more so as we go into tonight, and then eventually they calm down a little bit. So again, this is still going into Saturday afternoon there, and then by Saturday evening things start to slow down a little bit for us. And again, still breezy. This is still not ideal, especially with fresh snow on the ground, but it certainly could be a little bit more gusty. Diane, before we go on, I would like to answer a few questions that we have in here. I just want to remind everybody about the fact that we've had several comments, people asking about the radar showing snow, but there's nothing on the ground yet. And that is something that is taking place, and we did cover it initially when we first got on, but there is your pinpoint Doppler. There certainly does look to be a heck of a lot of snow out there, but it is not making it to the ground. There's a layer of dry air underneath that snow. So as the snow is falling down, it's forced to sublimate, which is basically evaporation, where you have the snowflakes just turning back into water vapor or just air. So you actually don't see the snowflakes making it all the way down to the ground, even if it shows up on radar. But we promise the snow that it's making to the ground is on the way. We expect it to be starting in Genesee County really any time now. You can really see that heavier area of snow moving right up I-94 there now just to the north. So it's probably just several minutes from entering places like Fenton or Perry just to the south, those southern ends of Shiawassee and Genesee County. So we're getting very close to that. And as far as the wind, yes, we do have the wind picking up as well. And will there be any break in the snow at any time at Bay City? If so, how long is another question we have here from Ryan. I don't think that we're going to have any super long periods without snow. As we go into tomorrow morning, things will start to slow down a little bit, and we'll have some intermediate waves of snow moving through. But as far as this evening, tonight, it's more than likely once it starts, it's going to keep going until we go into Saturday morning.
Yeah, Saturday morning is when you will have the better chance of picking up a little bit of a lull in the action. And then Saturday afternoon is when we find a few more of those breaks. Actually, speaking of that, we'll talk about that actually a little bit, but we have talked about kind of the wind and the snow rates at the same time. And let's really highlight this evening, because folks may say, all right, I really want to do this. It's Friday night, it's the weekend, but really in that time frame when you do want to start your weekend and your Friday night plans, this is when we're seeing our highest snow rates. This is when we're seeing our highest winds. Look how they both line up, that wind line up in the top into that brightest kind of orangish color. Same with the snow rates, and those are going to line up, and that is not a great mixture to have coming together at that time.
Yeah, so again, I'll kind of explain what this is that you're looking at. The black line is essentially showing the amount of impact that we'll see from both wind and snow rates, right? We've got one on the top for wind, one on the bottom for the snow rates, and kind of as you go up the graph, the more impactful it will be. So we have some of those stronger wind gusts as we go into this evening. We also have those heavy snow rates. Remember, that's an inch and a half per hour for some folks as we go into this evening. Those two things combined, especially when you're talking 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, that's when we'll have some issues as far as travel. A lot of issues really. And then things kind of wind down a little bit as far as snow rates go as we go throughout your Saturdays. We're starting to kind of lose lose some of that steadier, heavier snow for us. So by the time we make it into late Saturday morning, most of that will be dropped, of course, until we get some lake effect snow, which we'll talk on a little bit more here in just a moment. But the wind, you can kind of see leveling off for us as we go through Saturday, still maintaining some of those stronger wind gusts. So again, when it comes to the winter storm, it's not just about the snow. It's not just about the total number of inches that are going to end up in your backyard. There's a lot that go into making a snowstorm impactful, and those were just a few of them.
Yeah, and speaking of impacts, I know roadways is always a really big question. Thankfully, we're kind of going into the weekend, so that means that school's not in session, so everybody can just kind of make those determinations as far as sporting events that are going on for Friday afternoon, kind of the time zone that we're in. We're starting with the yellow light because though roadways right now are looking fine because the snowfall isn't quite here yet, but once that snow starts, it's not going to take very long. That's what we've been seeing in southeast Michigan already, is when that snow has pushed in, it didn't take long and it did start to make roads slushy. So that's why here this afternoon, when the snow begins, roadways are going to begin with that slush on there. Some of you like to say that they're going to get greasy, and they could kind of get that greasy look and feel to them. But as we go into Friday evening, we'll be beyond that. We are going to have snowy roads at that point, and then we add in the blowing snow and then the low visibilities. So we're going to continue those conditions into your Saturday morning. That's why we have the red light for both of those days. Now, also, we have been talking about the winter weather alerts. These come in from the National Weather Service. So the folks there, they have been working really hard as well, and we have 3 different colors here, and we can go through those. That winter weather advisory, that's going to be along I-69 and through the Thumb. That is going to be for the locations that are going to see a little bit more of those lighter totals that aligned with our snow map, because we're also going to see some of that rainfall cutting into there. But if you're in Saginaw County or Bay County, Midland County, yeah, you're in that pink, and that's that winter storm warning. We do anticipate the impacts to be a little bit stronger in that zone. We're also going to be looking at those snow totals to be higher. And then we do have the orange zone, and I know you're probably saying, oh my goodness, that's the blizzard word.
Oh yeah, the B word, there it is.
Yeah, so we do have that blizzard warning. That's going to be for Ogama and Iosco counties, and we're going to see that, and Alcona County as well. And so we are going to see those conditions here for your Friday and into Saturday, sparking that blizzard warning. So let's go and first talk of what is a blizzard? Because I think we might all have a different definition here.
Now, of course, everybody remembers, blizzard of 78 or 67, or there was the Groundhog Day blizzard of 2011. The definition of a blizzard has changed a little bit. And of course, depending on who you talk to, there's different ideas for what a blizzard is. But when it comes to the National Weather Service, who issues those warnings that we just looked at on the map, right? That's not us, that comes from the Weather Service. So the only ones allowed to do that. They have to have specific requirements met in order to issue those blizzard warnings. So as far as the National Weather Service is concerned, these are the 3 requirements that make a blizzard. You've got winds that are sustained or frequently gusting to 35 miles per hour or more. We will meet that check mark for just about all of mid-Michigan as we go into your evening, overnight hours, and then even going throughout Saturday. Now, as far as the snow is concerned, considerable falling or blowing snow with frequent visibility of about 1/4 mile or less. We will probably get to that point for all of mid-Michigan as well. Now, here's the important one, is the length. Conditions lasting 3 hours or longer. And the National Weather Service right now is expecting that to really be possible for those areas that were underneath the blizzard warning far to the north and west. Diane, I think it's safe to say that similar conditions will be felt at times in mid-Michigan throughout, especially the winter storm warning areas, those areas in pink, because we have the heavy falling snow, we've got the lower visibilities, and we'll have some wind.
The length part is
that's
really
where
the
things
question
get a little
here.
questionable. Yep.
Yeah, so because you have to keep that consistently, those conditions for 3 hours. So that's why the National Weather Service did make that decision to just isolate those northern counties under that blizzard warning. So like Kyle is mentioning, and even stressing the point that we are going to have conditions that make it feel like a blizzard. Now, can we keep those consistently for 3 hours or longer at a time? Because we could go 2 hours and then have those winds drop. Oh, well, now we don't meet the criteria. So there's a lot that goes into issuing that blizzard warning, and that's why the folks at the National Weather Service are keeping an eye to that, and also that consideration in length.
And one thing I want to mention here, right, we're talking about 2 hours versus 3 hours, where technically parts of mid-Michigan might not fall into the blizzard warning, We're kind of splitting hairs here, right? The point of what we're trying to say is if you're wondering why you are or are not in that blizzard warning, there are specific requirements that need to be met. Some areas will meet those, some areas won't. Bottom line is everybody dealing with heavy snow, the blowing wind, the low visibility.
Yes, and you can get those alerts directly to your phone using the First Alert Weather app.
It's been a long morning.
Yeah, we've been busy working here.
Yeah.
So scan that QR code. I'm sure a lot of you are already watching us on mobile. So you can go to your devices store, so Google Play, the App Store if you're on an Apple product, and you can download that. That is free to use. You'll want to go and set it to your location so that you're getting alerts for your county and for your location. We're not going to track you, so don't worry about that. We just want to make sure that you are getting the best information. And of course, this is not just a winter weather tool. This is all year. We, of course, are going to have updates here through the summer. We actually just had an update come out a little bit ago on the app, and we're going to continue updating this. So again, it's free to download. Make sure you have it on your devices, and even tell your friends and family, hey, I saw this on the app. I really think that, you know, this is what's going to happen here. So now we've been talking about the lake effect snow, so let's get into that.
Yes.
We do have the hour-by-hour conditions showing Saturday afternoon. So we're picking up now. The storm has left, and we still are seeing snow, but it's scattered.
Yes.
So we do have lake effect. Northwest winds are going to be riding over Lake Michigan. The wind is going to be much cooler than what the waters in Lake Michigan is going to be. So that's a perfect setup for lake effect. So you will see that you'll have scattered snow showers as we go throughout the day on Saturday. It may wane a little bit as we go into Saturday evening, just as those winds at night do time and time again try to settle down. But as we go into Sunday, we're still going to be looking at winds out of the west-northwest, and there's still going to be firing conditions that are going to allow for some lake effect snow bands. So we are going to be watching some of these areas a little bit closer.
Yeah, and Diane, one of the things about this lake effect snow is the band, as you were just mentioning. And the band here is actually very important because typically with lake effect, right, we've got, you know, these smaller bands that come off of Lake Michigan. But one thing with this particular event, because we have such strong wind and because the air is so cold above the lake, we're going to end up with these strong bands. So if you pay close attention here, you can see that this starts way up by Green Bay, down through Lake Michigan, across to Michigan, and then actually goes out over Lake Huron and then into Ontario. And then at some point, if we zoom this out, we could probably see that it starts in you know, Lake Superior and then even goes across here to, yeah, probably Ontario over there even to some degree, because these lake effect bands are all connected. And when you get these big connected bands like this, you've got greater opportunity for more whiteout conditions, snow squalls, heavy accumulations that occur very quickly. So we've got the big storm that's going to be moving through, you know, this evening, tonight, going throughout tomorrow. But then as we transition into tomorrow night and Sunday morning, now we have these lake effect bands moving through. And especially as we go into, you know, Sunday morning through early Sunday afternoon, we've got the chance for some of these heavier bands to move through. And then eventually we might have a little bit of a break as we go into Sunday night. But Diane, we could be looking at this lake effect kind of off and on, probably to less impacts, but still going throughout next week.
Yeah, so plan on seeing snowflakes pretty consistently here and there across mid-Michigan as we go into the brand new work week next week, because we have this cold air that's going to be locked into place. You'll see that on our 7-day forecast. So that's why we're keeping snow chances, though they are lighter, we are going to continue to watch that. Another thing that I want to note before we show you snowfall totals from the snow bands, you saw that one that Kyle was pointing out. Visibility in some of those bands can get tricky, and I know that there's a really big event in Detroit on Sunday night.
Yeah.
So as far as roadways, I anticipate they're going to easily improve as we get into that time frame.
Yes.
But maybe have your passenger, you know, your best friend that's going to the game with you, have them watching radar as you're driving, because then you can kind of see, ooh, we're going to run into this snow band, and visibilities could drop for a little bit. So having another person, one, cheer on the Lions, but also to watch radar getting to and from the game would definitely be a big help, because visibilities can drop in those snow bands. But here's a look at snow totals. This is not including the storm. So we are starting the clock here at Saturday at noon.
Saturday at noon is when this clock starts.
Saturday at noon. And then we're going all the way through your Sunday evening. Now that band that we were finding going through I-69, that could shift a little bit, meaning these numbers could easily shift a little bit. And even if you are in the thumb, some of your numbers are also going to be able to change just because of the lakes and the wind. So we are going to be watching those zones along I-69 and into the thumb. They're going to kind of maybe make up for that rainfall that's going to cut through the storm here tonight.
Right. Again, this is not what we're expecting tonight. This is going to be after the storm because the snow might have a few breaks, but generally speaking, we're going to continue with storm chances as we go into next week. I'm going to take a break from this for a second. I want to answer a few questions here, Diane. We're actually going to go back to the current Sky Tracker, and I want to point out something here rather important. There's some question about whether or not this storm has busted already. And essentially what that means is whether or not we're going to get any snow. I would like to point out that the storm has not even made it into Michigan yet, okay? We have not even seen the storm, the heaviest part of the storm, get anywhere close to Michigan. The center of the storm, which still has to pass directly overhead, is still way out in parts of Kansas and Missouri. So we've got a long way to go before the heaviest part of the storm makes it in here. It's going to be several hours before that happens. We're getting very close to that snow starting right now. So when we're talking about snow coming, of course, it's very important to understand the time frame that we're talking about. We still have all of this precipitation to move up into mid-Michigan, all this stuff back here in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa to move into mid-Michigan. So, Diane, we still have a long way to go before, we're really even looking at the heaviest part of this snow. So as far as whether or not, this snowstorm is on track, it is certainly on track, and the forecast stands. We just haven't started seeing the snow yet, which is totally expected. We weren't expecting anything to start until we get into this afternoon. We think Genesee County is likely going to be seeing some snowflakes here any minute.
Right, and I believe we actually have one of our cams. Let's pull it up here. It should be looking there in Genesee County. This is our Vehicle City Harley-Davidson cam. Yeah, and we have those snowflakes.
We've been waiting for that kind of initial round on this. This is our most southern camera. We've been waiting for those few snowflakes. If you pay attention to the pine trees there, you'll see the passing snowflakes. So this is only the beginning here, only the beginning.
Yes, and I'm glad that you pointed out those trees because you can kind of see that the winds, they're shaking a little bit. So they're going to start to pick up too. I know that this is not extremely intense, but we are still looking out into the distance. Of course, we're looking south, and we anticipate seeing that wall of snow to come in. So we're just going to keep looking south here, waiting for those visibilities to drop because that is going to happen. And some of those visibilities, when we say low visibilities, we could be talking under a mile, which is like those foggy mornings when you're trying to get the kids to school, or maybe it's even after the fog delay and it's still hazy and hanging around. So those conditions are still going to be possible for us. Of course, we are on YouTube and we are on Facebook Live, both of those. So we are looking through some of the questions and comments. I know a lot of you have been saying, hey, I'm checking radar and I am seeing snow on here, but I'm not really seeing snow on the ground. So again, just kind of pulling up our radar here, we are finding that, yeah, we have snow high up in the atmosphere, but it is not making it to the ground just yet. But I am kind of pulling out here to the south. As we take a look, let me get my pointer here, you're going to find that this is kind of where that heavy snow starts. You see that dark blue there? Let me pause this to where we're currently at. So you will find that that dark blue there, this is actually lining up perfectly with the radar out of the Detroit National Weather Service office. So this is going to kind of be that wall of snow that we're watching. So it's just north of 96, and we're going to see that just entering our southern counties here. Maybe in the 3 o'clock hour, we'll start to see that. So that is going to be headed northward. But once that steady snow starts, this is when roads are going to quickly become slushy, and this is when visibilities are going to drop. So though this is just as dark blue as this is evaporating. This is going to start to overcome that dry air, and that is going to win out for us to start to see those slushy conditions. So keep an eye to radar. I know you're saying, all right, we haven't gotten much, but it is coming. Also, we appreciate you, Tracy. She says nothing here in downtown Flint, but she's excited. She's looking for it. So we appreciate getting those reports.
Yeah, Diane, Director Aaron just told us we got a pretty neat view here. I think he's going to pull it up here for us. It appears to be Ford Field. That does have some snow around it, so if we can get that pulled up, we'll show you what that looks like. But you can see down there in Detroit, there's some heavy snow occurring down there. So this kind of, again, shows that the heaviest part of the snow is still to our south that is moving up into the area. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. And, you know, as far as that heavy snow goes, it has been leaving behind some accumulations, and it's only been falling in some of those areas like Jackson, Ann Arbor, Detroit for not very long, maybe only a couple of hours. So as we go through the next few hours here, eventually we're going to be seeing more of that snow accumulate. Here you go. This is a pretty neat view there. You can see two major things here, right? One, well, I guess three major things, depending on who you are. That's Ford Field, and there's going to be a playoff game there this weekend. Which
yeah, that's the most important one, right?
That's number one, yeah. But we also have some heavy snow falling here, but look at that wind. If you look at it close enough, it almost looks like the snow is going almost up a little bit on an angle on the very kind of, left side, like it's just straight sideways. That shows how strong these winds are.
And the thing is, the visibility here, okay, we can still see a little bit, but imagine when it gets dark. Our sunset is right now around 5:30-ish, and we're gonna see once that sun goes down, just imagine your headlights blaring into that snow and it's dark out. You're not gonna get a good look. So that's why we're saying get home from work and just go and enjoy watching all the news that you can on WNEM at 11 o'clock. I know Chris, he's going to be looking maybe even at some snow totals by then. Maybe we'll have some reports.
Yes.
And of course, he'll have the latest as the storm is going to be really kind of doing its job at that point.
Yes, that's exactly right. And one thing I want to point out, just for in case we have some new viewers here, I want to kind of do a little bit of a roundup of what we've been talking about. Again, we've got the snowstorm that's coming in, starting here in the next couple of hours for places in Genesee County up through the lower parts of mid-Michigan, eventually continuing as we continuing north as we go through the rest of the evening, and going to be bringing us several issues. And here's a look at some of your first alert impacts that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Big ones: slippery roads, likely slow travel. Some travel in some areas due to the snow totals and the wind could be impossible as we go into this evening, especially further to the north. We'll look at that snow map here probably again in just a moment. But also the blowing snow and low visibility, right? We just saw that on that Detroit camera. We've got the wind out there. We've got the falling snow. And this even goes for after the snow is finished falling. Think about all that fine, fresh snow that's going to be on the ground. The wind comes through, picks that up, keeps throwing it around right at, car height as you're driving down the road. So especially if you're in places like Gratiot County, parts of Saginaw County, in the thumb where it's wide open, you've got the chance for some of that blowing snow even through Sunday. And then as we, also are keeping an eye on the wind and that wet, heavy snow, there's a risk for power outages as well. And we already saw some of that with the, you could say, lighter storm on Tuesday going into Wednesday. So we've got the chance to do that again with this storm.
And JR asked the question, is it fair to say power outages are likely? Well, the thing is with the power outages, we were talking to consumers earlier this week. They said, of course, the winds are going to make things tricky, but they're really more concerned with dead trees coming down.
Yes.
Dead trees are not going to like 45, 50 mile per hour wind gusts. As those come down, they could hit power lines. And that's really kind of the main source. It's not necessarily the wind speeds itself. It's going to be kind of those other outliers as far as dead trees. That's really what they were stressed as far as maybe trying to clean those up if you had some time there before the storm, because that's really a lot of times where they see those dead trees come down, and that's where conditions start to get tricky for them as far as power. And of course, power restoration, when we're looking at wind gusts around 45 miles per hour at times, that's hard to get crews up even into the buckets as far as restoring power. So of course, make sure you're talking to your power companies. I know we got DTE in the thumb, we got consumers further inland, and I know those folks are going to keep their crews up to date, but also residents as well.
Right, and just want to clarify on something real quick. We can only say what the weather is going to be, questions of infrastructure, how dead the trees are, how much load they can withstand. So as far as the heavy snow and the wind goes. So as far as the weather is concerned, it is, weather that is capable of producing power outages. And it just depends on whether or not, crews are able to keep up with the work, or if there is, certain areas that get hit a little bit too hard. Diane, let's go ahead and jump into the snow map again, because I know we've had some questions about who sees what. I'll walk here over to the wall so we can take a look at this. But again, the thing I want to stress here is that we put the snow totals in a range from A to B. You could see snow that is A, you could see snow that is B, or in between. Please do not just look at that furthest number, okay, at the largest number, because if you're in some areas and you are only looking at that big number, you're not going to see that number, right? You're supposed to fall within that range. That's the idea of the range. There's nothing else to it. It's just a range. So in these lighter blue areas, we're looking at about 4 to 8 inches. So lighter snow totals relative to other places, but still plenty of snow to cause issues as far as travel, especially when you add in that wind. And this goes for Flint, Lapeer, Owasso, up into parts of the Thumb. Once you get near the bay and in northern parts of Huron County here, we've got the chance to start to see those higher totals, again, 6 to 10 inches. This extends down through the Tri-Cities specifically. Bay region is kind of going to be on the border between the 6 to 10 and 4 to 8. Tri-Cities specifically, we have kind of in that 6 to 10 range. If you're in southern Saginaw County, we think you kind of end up a little bit closer to the 4 to 8. And the further north you go, Midland's kind of also in this range. We've got this, it seems like 2 storms now in a row are right on that transition line between the heavier snow to the north and west and that lighter snow to the south. Okay, so it's unfortunate that the Tri-Cities are right in there, but that's what we're keeping an eye on, is for that heavier snow to kind of fall near and just to the north and west of Midland. We're including Mount Pleasant in some of those higher snow totals, you know, that 8 to 12 range. And then once we get into our far northern and western areas, this is where we really likely see the heavier snow for us. Some of those isolated totals might exceed that 14-inch mark, but again, that is, you know, worst case scenario. Expect to fall somewhere between this range. Another thing I'd like to point out as well is if you're on the lake shores here, remember, we don't have any ice really out there on the lakes, and if we do, it's right up against the shore. We're only just starting to see maybe a little bit of ice on the bay, but most of our lake shores have got nothing on them. So we're still feeling the influences of the relatively warmer waters, kind of keeping a little bit of a pool of warm air near the water, and so that's going to help to cut down a little bit on snow totals for places like Standish, up towards Tawas, and then as you get up towards Oscoda, I think we lose a little bit of that because it will be cold enough, but we'll see some of the higher totals there. But again, as far as these numbers go, remember that it is possible to fall within that range. Please don't just look at that higher number. Diana, we got any questions coming in?
Everything we have covered as far as what are some of our snow totals, and you just did a great job breaking those down. Overall, we did cover a good chunk of the questions that have come in. We have seen some reports. One of our friends, let me see if I can find it real quick. I've kind of been going through here, but saw a report that said snow, starting to see some snow in Saginaw Township.
All right.
So we are starting to see a little bit of that drier air that we were talking about coming on in. I'm glad that you brought up our Vehicle City Harley-Davidson cam, because yeah, you can show that things are, when they start, it's really going to get going. So we are just on that edge right now.
What we can do is we can kind of walk through some of our cameras here to give a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like outside. We'll start way up north. We're going to start up here in Houghton Lake, and no snow, but look at that wind. That sure is whipping up there. So we have the wind for just about everybody right now, and we're going to maintain that as we go throughout kind of the rest of the afternoon. We'll kind of pull up one of the cameras on CMU's campus. This is in Mount Pleasant. Again, no snow, but we have that wind. That camera is shaking. That camera doesn't really shake all that often. In downtown Mount Pleasant, so very near here, again, still mostly looking at some of that wind and the flags that you can see there. No falling snow at the moment. We'll kind of take a trip down M20 and then eventually US 10 here for our US 10 camera. There is that wind. Maybe a few passing snowflakes there at times. I don't see a whole lot. Travel's okay right now, but still, you know, it's really focused on that wind as far as our current impacts for most areas. And looking out over our Saginaw Bay camera, as far as, again, what we're seeing in most of the Bay region is just that wind right now. We haven't had a lot of the snow make it up this far just yet in our Saginaw camera. Again, keeping an eye on maybe a few of those passing snowflakes moving through at times. A lot of that wind, maybe a snowflake here or there. As far as further to the south, though, we'll head down I-75 here to Birch Run, where we're getting really close to starting to see some of those snowflakes. Actually, I think I just saw when there's a few. Yep, there's a few snowflakes out there. And again, I want to point out that big flag back there. That's at the Camping World dealer back there. That flag is a very large flag, and to get it to stand up all the way, it takes a pretty strong wind. So we're getting close to that point right now. And as far as further south, is if we go down to downtown Flint here, again, wind, and I know we saw some snowflakes there earlier. Maybe it looks like roads are also getting a little damp down there as well. Wet. So, you know, there's been no question as to whether or not this storm will produce what we think it'll produce. You know, we did not expect snow to start any sooner than this, so we're perfectly on time, perfectly on schedule. you know, we looked at this camera just a few minutes ago. This is the Vehicle City camera. There was a few passing snowflakes, and now we've got closer whiteout conditions, and roads look to be getting a little damp.
Yeah, now we have been going for over a half hour now, so we've covered mainly everybody's questions. We appreciate everybody letting us know what you see. Some of you have been saying, JR said in Schwartz Creek, I'm seeing snow. In Burton, I'm seeing snow. In parts of Saginaw, some folks are seeing snow, some are not. We had in Freeland, we got a report that said, yep, we got some snow. That came in from Tammy. So we appreciate everybody for joining us, letting us know what you see. Of course, we're going to have updates. Our next newscast is going to be at 4 p.m. So Kyle and I will be back. We'll be going into detail of what we're working with at the time, but also we don't anticipate any updates really. The storm is now moving in, and so we'll just make sure that you're up to date with current conditions. Again, have the TV5 First Alert weather app. We'll have updates in between our newscasts there. But again, we thank you for joining us this afternoon, and stay safe, everybody.